The Locked On Podcast Network presents the College Sports Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in college sports. From our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story. Why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The College Sports Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in college sports.
The Florida State Seminoles are rolling on the recruiting trail.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Adding Chauncey Kennon, I think a lot of people expected that, to be really honest with you. I know that I talked about him for probably the last 5 months in some capacity because he's a kid they just had to get. Grew up a Florida State fan. There's a kid that is not just a good football player, but somebody that was recruited nationally. Georgia recruited him. Miami recruited him. He could have went to numerous programs. LSU wanted him. If you've got a kid like that in your own state who grew up a fan of your program, you've got elite DB coaches, it's got to work out. So I want to talk a little bit about that, what the impact is for the Noles. And I'm also going to discuss why this DB class, combined with a couple of the others, could potentially send Florida State back into that dominant era of defense, like long term. They got the right defensive coordinator. They got a good defensive staff. They could get back to that. And it's been a minute. I mean, Florida State's had some good defenses recently, don't get me wrong, but they haven't been dominant week in, week out, where teams feared you. Adding players like this and just putting more bullets in the gun to finalize what you can do, that's how you get there. You out-recruit your competition. We have better guys than you and more of them. It's not just like your starting lineup here. Like Florida State used to run waves of guys at people. That's what adding a Chauncey Kennon does. He's going to have to earn his way up. But anyway, to make a long story short, if you look at Florida State over the last 10 years or so, the up and down nature of some of the things that have gone on in recruiting and everything else that they've tried to do with the portal and all that, you could reduce some of that with recruiting guys like Chauncey Kennon. So getting him today was huge, and getting him over the likes again of Miami, Florida, Georgia, LSU, etc., is really important. Now let's talk a little bit about the class overall. I'm just going to use one barometer here. 24/7 has Florida State's class ranked number 11. As the number 11 class in the country, it's been a minute since Florida State was in that boat too. Got my iPad here. I'm just going to kind of go over a few of the guys and a few of the things in general they have. Like they've got a quarterback, they've got a running back, they've got several receivers committed. This group, depending on how you want to rank, like you could say 5 receivers, 1 or 2 could end up on defense too. They got 5 DBs, defensive lines. They've got a balanced class. Who knew? They're still waiting on a couple of guys for decisions O-line, but that's typical. This is one of the best classes, like from a balance perspective and a talent perspective, since 2017, 2016, somewhere in there towards the end of the Jimbo era. This is why recruiting matters. Like you can quickly change your roster. At the transfer portal, I get that. But when you build from a group that all want to play together, they know each other, it also matters from that perspective as well. It's not easy, to put it mildly. It is not easy to do this. I get it. But Florida State put them, not just in the last 6 months, like this is a year-plus process. But when the new coaches came in, the last 6 months or so was most important. All those junior day visits, all that stuff, those kids, they get on campus over and over again. That's why you get these commitments. Here are a few of the guys. Let me see if I can find just a few of the commitments, like in the last, I don't know, let's say month and a half, a few of the guys in general that have committed. Obviously, Jaden O'Neal, the quarterback, they flipped from Oklahoma. You got Chauncey Kennon. Those are 2 very, very important commitments. You got Ernest Rankins. That's a really important commitment. Florida State's overall group, I mean, Jay Timmons, Xavier Tiller, Brandon Bennett, you get all these guys in the summer, because you put in the work long term. One of my biggest complaints about any program, Florida State included, is when I know from being in the recruiting industry which schools are putting in, quote unquote, the work to build relationships with coaches, mothers, their sisters, everybody in the family. It's not just about the recruit, but everybody involved. And Florida State has done that. Let me give you a couple of specific examples, like kids that I know, they really did a great job. Devin Carter from Face-to-Face Conversation, they put in the effort there. Ernest Rankins, that's a kid, also ironically, they beat out Auburn for. I thought he was going to Auburn. Auburn does a really good job recruiting that staff. They've gotten beat up a little this year, but they do a good job. Jay Timmons, a kid that's got connections to Florida State. He committed to Indiana early, but they stayed on him to flip him. Ephraim White, that's a kid that was the first commit. He's had Notre Dame come at him. He's had NC State come at him. Florida State has stayed on him. James Carrington, a kid who plays in California. That's not easy to get a kid like that. He's committed. Jason Lopez, he could have went to Miami. He's local to that area, one of the best slot receivers in the country. He committed this summer. Florida State staff has earned it. And if there's anything that I know right now, Florida State hasn't had something like this in a long time. I can tell you, somebody that works in media, it's a lot more fun when people put the work in like this, and then the results come. We can talk about it positively. We can talk about it from a perspective of, hey, this is what it's supposed to look like. It's Florida State. It's great to be back to that. I was very fortunate when I started this channel. It was August of 23, right before Florida State went on that great run a couple of years ago. I was blessed, but I missed the recruiting stuff. It was just straight into the middle of fall camp, and then boom, here we go. Now, we've had some lulls because recruiting's been so up and down. I still talk about it, but it's not as much fun as doing what I'm doing right now. I can assure you that. This is a heck of a lot more fun. This is a blast.
Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups all summer long, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions, fun ways to bet. It's easy to use, fast to pay out. It makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I am part of the action. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started.
The Irish kept off a recruiting trifecta, landing wide receivers Kennon Finley, Devin Fitzgerald, and Braden Robinson.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
It's no secret to Notre Dame fans that Marcus Freeman has had major success recruiting the sons of former NFL players, but the rest of the country seems to be catching on after the Irish landed commitment from Devin Fitzgerald, the son of NFL legend Larry Fitzgerald, arguably one of the greatest wide receivers of all time. Actually, I don't think it's arguable that he's one of the greatest receivers of all time, but I think that he has a case to be considered the greatest receiver to ever play the game of football. Devin does not come with his dad's pedigree, but he's still a very talented prospect. He's a 3-star wide receiver from Brophy College Prep in Phoenix, Arizona, and he is a big-body wide receiver who can play the boundary at Notre Dame. He's listed as 6'2", 205 pounds, and he's ranked as the number 72 wide receiver in the class and the number 454 player overall. Fitzgerald's stock really started to rise after a breakout junior season when he racked up 52 catches for 720 yards and 9 touchdowns. Notre Dame has been recruiting him, though, since his freshman year of high school, but they waited until May of this year to offer him a scholarship. This has been a long process, but then once Fitzgerald got the offer, he scheduled his official visit for June 13th, the big recruiting weekend that we have talked about so much on the show. And stop me if you've heard this before. Marcus Freeman and the Notre Dame coaching staff made a great impression on Devin Fitzgerald and his family, and ultimately that was enough to seal the deal. Fitzgerald's final 3 schools were Notre Dame, UCLA, and Stanford. Clemson was in the mix there for a little bit, but then it really came down to Notre Dame and UCLA, and Notre Dame won out because of that official visit weekend, they were able to close on him. And after that weekend, Devin Fitzgerald canceled an official visit to North Carolina, and the writing was on the wall that Fitzgerald was going to be a part of this class of 2026. Devin ended up telling Eli Letterman of ESPN that he's actually known Notre Dame wide receiver coach Mike Brown since he was 5 years old. And Mike Brown was instrumental in this recruitment. He has taken a lot of heat in the past for his inability to land the big-time wide receiver prospects, but Mike Brown has got things rolling right now for Notre Dame recruiting at the wide receiver position. Fitzgerald was the 4th wide receiver to commit. Braden Robinson ended up being the 5th, and this was a huge class for him. It was very, very important that Notre Dame landed multiple big-time wide receivers with plenty of upside, and that's exactly what Mike Brown has been able to do, so he deserves a ton of praise for what he's been able to do in this class. And not only did Notre Dame need to add big-time talent, they needed to add a boundary receiver, and that's exactly what Devin Fitzgerald can provide for this team. He has the ideal size for the position. He's listed at 6'2", 205 pounds, but he plays even bigger, and he has grown significantly since he was in high school. He was a late bloomer, and look, I can relate to that. When I was in high school, not joking, my first day of freshman year, I was 5'2", 105, and I played freshman football. I think the first day of practice, they looked at me and thought I was insane, and maybe they considered calling child services. Thank God they didn't. I ended up growing a little bit over the next 4 years, but Devin Fitzgerald is in a similar boat, although I don't think he was 5'2", 105 at the start of freshman year. But now he's up to 6'2", 205, and I think that he's actually going to grow a couple more inches by the time he steps foot on campus. Like his dad, he has really strong hands and excellent body control, especially in contested catch situations. I think you can teach hands if you just get enough reps and you have big enough hands. You're going to be good at catching the ball so long as you focus when you're actually running the route. But I really think that body control is kind of a God-given thing. Yes, you can practice it, you can improve it, but if you want to get really, really good at it, part of it is just God-given, and Devin Fitzgerald certainly has that. He's not necessarily a burner, but he's deceptively fast. He doesn't look like he's running all that hard, and yet none of those guys can catch him. So he kind of runs like a gazelle. He's got really long strides, and even though it doesn't look like he's exerting a lot of effort, if no one can catch him, who really cares? So I do think that he might not have the elite athleticism that some of the 5-star guys have. He has enough that he's going to be able to run away from guys at the college level. He's a polished route runner with a really high football IQ. No surprise given his pedigree, and he may not be elite at one specific thing, but he's so technically sound, I think he's going to be able to thrive at the college level. He's probably not going to see like a ton of playing time as a true freshman, but I fully expect him to become a major contributor by his junior year. When you have a dad like Larry Fitzgerald, you're just going to be born in a different environment. You're going to understand the nuances of playing wide receiver. You're going to have a really high football IQ. And let's be honest, he's probably getting some of the best training that you can get as a wide receiver at the high school level. I think that's the case with Devin Fitzgerald. And I think that's a big reason why he was able to make such a big jump in his game from his sophomore to his junior season. If he's able to do the same from his junior to his senior year, then he's really going to rise up the recruiting rankings. If he mirrors anything close to Bryce Young's high school trajectory, then you could be looking at a really big-time prospect by the time this is all said and done. Because if you remember, Bryce Young at one point in time was just a 3-star who was a really tall, skinny kid with a great name. That was kind of what Devin Fitzgerald was. I don't think he's as skinny, but he's also been improving so much year to year that it's not that crazy to think that Devin Fitzgerald could end up becoming like a high 4-star prospect at the end of the 2026 cycle. Not only is he developing as a player, he also is a strong fit for Notre Dame's culture. His character and his work ethic should help him reach his ceiling. And now Devin joins Thomas Davis Jr. and Kennon Finley as sons of former NFL stars in Notre Dame's class of 2026. And then once he gets on campus, he's going to join a wide receiver room that also includes the sons of Plaxico Burress and Elijah Burress and Jerome Bettis Jr. Clearly, Marcus Freeman's message resonates with NFL veterans. They trust him to develop their sons. And this is not new, right? Jordan Clark, the son of Ryan Clark, transferred to Notre Dame from Arizona to play out his final season of college football. It was cool to see Ryan Clark in the stands. Also, Notre Dame was able to recruit Kennedy Urlacher, the son of Brian Urlacher, out of high school. And even though Kennedy ended up transferring to USC, it's yet another example of a big-time former NFL player who trusted Marcus Freeman in the recruiting stage. There's also been other instances, like Notre Dame had Ivan Taylor committed at one point last cycle, the son of Ike Taylor. So if you look around, you can see it. right? All these former NFL players, they come to campus. They see what Notre Dame has to offer, not just on the football field, but off the field. They understand the importance of life after football, and that is a big talking point for Notre Dame. That's something that they stress. It's something that separates them from the other great teams in college football. But what had been holding Notre Dame back is their ability to compete on the football field with those other elite teams. But coming off that run to the national championship, when Notre Dame was on the doorstep of ending that title drought, I think that sends another message to all these former players that it's not just about preparing their kid for the life after football, it's about maximizing their experience playing the game while they can. And Notre Dame presents a very unique opportunity for all of these players, but specifically the ones who have been raised in NFL families. So the fact that all of these different former NFL players are trusting Marcus Freeman and this Notre Dame program to maximize their son's playing ability and then set them up for success later on in life, like that is extremely high praise for a head coach entering his 4th season. I mean, it feels like Marcus Freeman has been around for a really long time, but he's only completed 3 seasons. He's going into his 4th year. And that is a message the rest of college football should really be paying attention to. So Kennon Finley got the good news rolling on the 4th of July when he made his commitment to Notre Dame official. Then Devin Fitzgerald followed suit on Saturday, and Braden Robinson capped it off on Sunday when he became the 3rd wide receiver to commit to Notre Dame over the weekend and the 5th wide receiver overall to commit to Notre Dame in the class of 2026. And he caps off one of the best classes at the position in a long, long time. Now, Braden Robinson's recruiting profile is pretty unique. He's not the biggest guy, to say the least. He's listed as 5'8", 160 pounds, but he plays football for Red Oak High School in Texas at the 5A level, so he's going up against some big-time competition, and he has been really, really productive. He is ranked number 52 among wide receivers in his class and number 340 overall, and he was actually planning on announcing his commitment on July 20th, but he moved it up 2 weeks following his official visit on June 13th. Once he made that decision to move his commitment date up from July 20th to July 6th, felt like the writing was on the wall for him to become a member of this class and follow Kennon Finley and Devin Fitzgerald for a trifecta at the wide receiver position. The reason he intended to announce on July 20th is because it's his mom's birthday, but it felt like Notre Dame kind of pressed him a little bit to make this one big grand weekend for the wide receiver position, cap off the class in a big way. And Robinson picked Notre Dame over Miami and Arizona, but he also had a bunch of other offers, and even Ohio State was in the running at one point. And I remember when I was first doing a deep dive into Braden Robinson, his recruiting profile and all that stuff, I noticed that Ohio State was in the mix. They were one of his favorites, and I thought, that doesn't really bode well for Notre Dame, because if Ohio State really wants a receiver, more often than not, they're going to land that player. And I think Ohio State moved off him a little bit later on in the process. But the fact that Brian Hartline even considered him a take in this class is pretty telling. He is a very talented prospect. But I'm not going to lie, after that big official visit weekend on June 13th through the 15th, I wasn't sure if Braden Robinson was going to have a spot in this class for Notre Dame if he didn't commit soon, because the spots were filling up fast. They already had Bubba Frazier and Dylan Faison, and then after that weekend, it looked like they were in great shape with Kennon Finley and Devin Fitzgerald, and you're looking at that group and you're thinking, man, even though this is a big need for Notre Dame in this class, 4 wide receivers is a lot. Are they going to be willing to take 5? But once it became clear that this Notre Dame coaching staff was going to be willing to take 5 wide receivers in this class, as long as Robinson would decide sooner rather than later, you knew Robinson was going to be that 5th guy and join this class and cap off a really great group of wide receivers. Notre Dame is getting a gifted football player with elite speed. Sometime you got guys who are track runners, they play football, and they really excel at the high school level, but their game doesn't translate that well to college because they can't just out-athlete everyone the same way. Now, the difference is Braden Robinson is going up against really good football competition in Texas, especially at the 5A level, so he's already had a chance to prove himself as a football player, and he's been very productive. He has elite straight-line speed, which makes him a threat in the vertical passing game, but he also has incredibly quick feet, which makes him a lethal route runner. When the ball is thrown his way, he's sure-handed and has great football instincts with the ball in his hand. Like, he is awesome to watch after the catch. That's my favorite part of watching him in his highlight tapes. Once he gets to the ball, look out. He can take the ball in a jet sweep, even a handoff, or he can take the ball in a screenplay and take it to the house every single time. But he's even better as a return man. Like, he catches the ball on a punt or a kickoff return, he could take it to the house at any moment. I'm not going to say he's the next Rocket, because Rocket is obviously in a tier of his own, but when you watch Braden Robinson playing high school, there are certainly flashes that will remind you, well, not remind me, because I wasn't alive to watch Rocket when he was at Notre Dame, but trust me, my dad loved him. I've seen all the highlights. I know how good of a player Rocket was when he was at Notre Dame. But like Rocket, Braden Robinson is going to have to get a lot stronger once he gets to college, because the Rocket was great as a true freshman. Then he ended up getting a lot better as he continued to put on strength and weight and all that stuff. Then he became even more difficult to tackle. Robinson has to get stronger because even though he's really, really fast, he's going to have to get bigger so that he can break more tackles and not go down as easily if a defender gets his hands on him, because even though it's difficult for these high school kids to bring him down, big-time college players, especially linebackers, like they're strong enough where if they get a hand on a guy who is undersized as Robinson, that's going to knock him down.
Check your bank account and wonder where'd all my money go between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment. It's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing your money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay.
The Florida Gators continue their massive recruiting run with the commitment of linebacker Malik Morris.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators.
The Florida Gators, just awesome recruiting momentum there continues on with the addition of Malik Morris, linebacker out of Lakeland. Interesting thing that is a big talking point surrounding Malik Morris's recruitment right now is that depending on where you look, the weight is very different, right? You look at On3, and it's even weird that, On3 lists him as 6'1", 225 pounds. He's a 4-star on every service, by the way. I forgot if I said that, but On3 lists him as 6'1", 225 pounds. But when Hayes Fawcett, who uses the On3 Rivals recruiting stuff, which, by the way, that's what it is usually. When you see, 4-star linebacker did this, 3-star did this, 5-star did this, he's almost always using the On3 stuff because he's an On3 guy. But he listed 6'1", 250 pounds, which is interesting. Because On3 lists him as 6'1", 225 pounds. And there are rumors, I guess, reports, we'll say, that Malik Morris is at one point up to 270 pounds, which might be true or might have been true, I guess, in the past, because while we got the reports or we got the rumors that, hey, he's up to 270, we also got reports that he was down to 240, 250-ish. And again, Hayes Fawcett tweeted him as 6'1", 250 pounds. Important to note that weight fluctuation is not what I do think a lot of people, a lot of players, when they have their weight fluctuate like that, it is concerning, right? But with Malik Morris, we have an explanation for it, and so it's not as concerning to me. Like the way that I think about it, and you can feel how you feel. But the way that I think about weight fluctuation is if it proves to be a consistent thing, and if it's, legitimately fluctuating up and down. Malik Morris played at the weight that he was playing at, which I do believe is closer to that 6'1", 225-pound mark, and ballooned up reportedly while dealing with a knee injury. And I get it. Obviously you don't want someone to gain that much weight because in an ideal world, they're dieting properly and all that. But there's also levels to everything, right? Knee injury means he's not going to be active. He's not going to be running around. He's not going to be doing much, obviously. So he's going to be more sedentary, and that leaves you more prone to gaining weight. The diet, not everybody has the wherewithal, the means to eat that healthy lifestyle that we can talk about. And also, kids are, especially athletic kids, are just superhumans with what they can consume, what they can shed weight-wise. So I'm really not concerned about it because it's a one-time thing that we can explain, and so don't really care, right? He committed to Florida. If he goes through his first, we'll say, spring, and he's listed as, after his first spring, probably like 230, whatever that may be, right? He's listed as 230 then. And then he comes back for fall camp and or OTAs, whatever you want to call anything. He comes back and he's 255, 260 when he was just 230. Then we could say, all right, that's not a good indicator, right? But for a one-time thing to happen only while he was injured, yeah, sorry, I can't care about it. I just don't. Especially when we're not even at his senior year, right? So he can come back and go. He can come back from his senior year, be 240. I'd be fine with that. 240 is big for a linebacker in today's day and age of football, but 240 is also not unplayable, especially for the type of linebacker that Malik Morris is, which we'll talk a little bit more about in the next segment. But Malik Morris, we're not going to go full in-depth scouting report. We'll talk a bit more about him. But at 6'1", if Malik Morris is playing at anywhere in that 225 to 240 range, I don't think that that's too bad, especially if you maintain your mobility and your athleticism. I don't think it's a big negative at all, right? The last few months for Malik Morris have felt like they've been all Florida as far as the actual recruitment goes, have felt like all Florida. There were rumors going basically since last Thursday. I want to say that's when they really started. I don't want to say gaining traction because I feel like they were nonsense the whole time, but started we'll say gaining traction. Not in the sense they were actually happening, but in the sense that social media started talking about them more. Those started really popping off, last Thursday. Friday came around and people were getting a little skittish. He ended up pushing the commitment back from Friday, July 4th to Monday, July 7th, which wasn't a big thing because even the July 4th date was never set in stone. It was always what we were expecting situation. So we had all those reports come out and it was like, other schools are throwing money at him and he might take more money elsewhere. If he stays with Florida, he's going to have to take less money. He's going to have to do this, that, this. I'll be honest here. Even if there was any validity to those rumors, which I'm sure schools were circling back and throwing money, because that's how basically every recruit is now, right? Every highly touted, very talented recruit is getting those last minute, last day, hey, what if we up the bag to this amount? And then see what happens. Like, sure, that happens all the time with kids. I don't think that that's a big deal, to be honest. I don't think it's a unique situation. But even then, the whole time, like the legitimacy of it happening kind of just felt like timeline nonsense, right? Which we know what timeline nonsense is. It's people pretending that they know more than they really know, people pretending that they're more in the know than they really are, and people pretending that they're more important than they really are to go, oh, I know this thing's happening. And it's really sad to watch people do it, if we're being honest. But again, with Malik Morris, it kind of felt like nonsense the whole time. Again, even if it was legit, it felt like nonsense. The whole come out of nowhere when everybody's for a month going, yeah, it's Florida by a mile, and then come out of nowhere last minute, last couple days, the midnight hour, the witching hour, whatever you want to call it, and then start thinking that all of a sudden things are going to shift. Just didn't feel like it made a ton of sense. When watching his commitment ceremony, he picked up a Texas A&M hat first. My first thought was, oh, he's doing a fake out. Like I wasn't like, oh my God, he just committed to Texas A&M. Watching it, I saw him pick up the Texas A&M hat, put on the Texas A&M hat, and I was like, he's faking it. Like there was no doubt. And then he said, the University of, and I knew it wasn't Texas A&M, and we knew it wasn't Miami the whole time. So it just felt, again, like it felt like Florida the whole time. It just, especially after the official visit. Especially after the official visit, it felt like Florida. Felt like Florida so much that when he was on his official visit, we thought he might commit. When he came back for an unofficial visit afterward, we thought he might commit. It felt like Florida. I just can't pretend that this is one where we were really sweating bullets for. or at least I wasn't, because again, even the rumors just didn't really feel legit and threatening, and so didn't bother me.